There is a specific kind of quiet that arrives in the middle of things that should feel significant. Not in the difficult moments. Those are accounted for, expected, navigated. In the good ones, the milestone, the recognition, the evening that is, by every reasonable external measure, evidence that you have built what you were trying to build. And in the middle of it, something arrives that isn't quite dissatisfaction, and isn't quite emptiness, and isn't quite the question, is this it? Which was addressed in an earlier episode, and which is about the gap between achievement and meaning. This is something slightly different, quieter, more patient. It is a question about direction rather than about arrival. Not, is this enough? But, what is this for? The life you are building, the work, the accumulation, the construction of something that looks from the outside like a successful adult existence. Who is it for? What does it produce beyond yourself? What will remain when the man who built it is no longer here? These questions don't tend to arrive in the middle of struggle. They arrive in the middle of sufficiency. When there is enough comfort, enough security, enough recognition, that the absence of something else becomes audible. The absence of contribution, of generation, of something built, not just for your own life, but into the lives of others. This episode is about that absence, about what psychology says it means, about what the Stoics understood about it, and about the question that, asked honestly and held carefully, tends to reorient a life without requiring it to be rebuilt from scratch. The question is, what kind of man will you have been? Erik Erikson, the developmental psychologist who gave us the concept of the identity crisis, described human development not as a project that ends in early adulthood, but as a lifelong sequence of psychological tasks, each presenting its particular challenge and its particular opportunity. His seventh stage, the one that occupies roughly the middle decades of adult life, from the 30s through the 50s, is described in terms that most men in that stage immediately recognize when they encounter them, even if they have never heard the vocabulary before. He called it generativity versus stagnation. Generativity, the drive to create something of lasting value for others, to generate in children, in mentorship, in creative work, in institutional contribution, in community, something that will exist after you, something that required your specific presence to come into being, and that will carry the trace of that presence forward. Stagnation, the continuation, past the point where it was adequate, of a life organized around personal accumulation, the accumulation of experience, security, status, recognition, things that serve the self without extending beyond it. Erikson was not saying that accumulation is wrong. In the earlier decades of adult life, the work of building, career, relationships, financial security, competence is exactly what is needed. The tasks of early adulthood are legitimately self-focused. But there is a point, Erikson argued, at which the self has been sufficiently built, at which the psychological need shifts, at which the drive to accumulate more for oneself begins to produce diminishing returns, not because it fails to produce more, but because more of the same thing is no longer what is needed. What is needed in the middle decades of life is the experience of generating something for someone else. And the man who does not make this transition, who continues to organize his life around personal accumulation past the point where it is serving him, enters what Erikson called stagnation. Not in the dramatic sense. The life continues, the achievements continue, the accumulation continues. But the felt sense of meaning begins gradually to hollow out. Let me describe what stagnation actually looks like, not as a clinical category, but as a daily experience, because it is rarely dramatic enough to be easily identified. It looks like a man who has done what was required and continues to do it. He's competent, he's reliable, he has built something, a career, a degree of financial security, perhaps a family, certainly a set of achievements that he can identify when the occasion calls for it. He's not obviously struggling. But there is, increasingly, a sense of motion without traction, of doing the same things for reasons that feel less compelling than they once did, of working toward goals that, achieved, produce a familiar, brief satisfaction, followed by the familiar reset to whatever the next goal is. The pattern is recognizable from EP008, the existential vacuum, the achievement that doesn't produce the meaning it implied. But what Erikson identifies in the midlife version is something more specific than the general failure of achievement to satisfy. It is the absence of generation. The man who has built and accumulated, who has built for himself, begins to notice, somewhere in the fabric of a life that is working by external measures, that he has not yet left anything genuinely behind. That the impact of his existence on the world beyond his own circumstances is difficult to specify. That if he were to step out of the picture tomorrow, the people he has encountered would lose a reliable presence, an efficient contributor, a person they respected, but they would not have lost something that he specifically created for them. This is not a catastrophe. It is a signal. A signal that the developmental task of this phase has not yet begun. The research on generativity is not anecdotal. It is extensive, robust, and consistent across populations and methodologies. Men who achieve what Erikson called generativity, who orient their lives toward contribution and the creation of lasting value for others, report significantly higher well-being, deeper relationships, and a more resilient sense of meaning than men who remain in stagnation. Not slightly higher, significantly. This is not the result of a particular form of contribution. Not parenthood specifically, not a specific career path, not a particular type of creative work. The research is agnostic about the form. What predicts well-being is the orientation, the genuine investment of energy and attention in something that will outlast the self and benefit others. It is also not correlated with external markers of success. The man with the larger career and the higher income does not report higher generativity than the man with the smaller career and the deeper investment in mentorship, community, or the specific humans around him. What produces meaning is not the scale of the contribution. It is the quality of the investment. The sense that what one does matters beyond oneself. that there is someone or something on the receiving end of one's effort, and that the receiving end is genuinely enriched. There is also a finding that deserves specific attention for the men this episode is speaking to. Generativity is not primarily about legacy in the formal sense, about what you will be remembered for. It is about what you are contributing now. The research suggests that the experience of meaning that generativity produces is immediate, not deferred. It does not require the confirmation of posterity or the evidence of historical impact. It requires the lived experience, day to day, of mattering to someone beyond yourself. This is not a small thing. It is, in fact, the specific thing that the accumulation mode cannot produce. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world. He commanded armies, he governed provinces. His decisions shaped the lives of millions across an empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt. He had more external power than almost any person in history. And in his private journals, he wrote about Alexander the Great. Not with admiration, with a specific kind of philosophical clarity. Alexander the Great and his stable boy, Aurelius noted, are both dead. He wrote about Socrates, about the Stoics he admired, about the rulers and generals and philosophers whose names Rome still remembered, and he returned again and again to the same observation. Time had swallowed them. The power was gone. The recognition was gone. The empires were restructured or collapsed. The names survived, in some cases, as records, but the men themselves and everything they had built for themselves was simply gone. This was not nihilism. Marcus was not concluding that nothing matters. He was performing a specific philosophical exercise, the examination of what actually persists, in order to clarify what was worth building. And his conclusion, across the thousands of private entries of the Meditations, was consistent. What outlasts great men is not what they accumulated, not the territory, the wealth, the recognition. What outlasts them is what they contributed. The ideas that changed how people thought. The institutions they built that served people beyond their own lifetimes. The character they demonstrated that became, for those around them, a model of what was possible. Socrates is not remembered because of what he had. He's remembered because of what he gave to the individuals who encountered him, to the philosophical tradition that built on him, to every subsequent generation that has been challenged and clarified by the questions he raised. Marcus wrote from the position of a man who had everything and was thinking honestly about what would remain. He was not depressed by what he found. He was clarified. The Stoic framework addresses legacy not through sentiment, but through a specific philosophical discipline. The practice of imagining the end, of looking back on a life from its conclusion and asking what was genuinely worth building, was a regular exercise in the Stoic tradition, not as a source of anxiety, but as a clarifying lens. What does this exercise reveal? For most men who engage with it honestly, it reveals a specific asymmetry. The things that feel most urgent in the daily construction of life, income, status, the accumulation of the external markers of success, feel, from the vantage point of the end, less significant than they felt in the midst of pursuing them. And the things that receive less daily urgency, the quality of time invested in specific people, the contribution made through specific work, the particular difference that one's specific presence made in the lives of those around them. These feel, from the same vantage point, more significant than their daily treatment suggested. This is not a counsel of impracticality. The man who has no income cannot invest in others. The foundations matter. But the Stoics were insistent on the distinction between the foundation and the point. The financial security is the foundation. The generativity, the investment of what the security enables into something beyond the self, is the point. Seneca wrote, "It is not that I have little time, it is that I waste much." The waste he had in mind was not inefficiency in the productivity sense. It was the investment of the finite time available in pursuits that produced nothing of lasting value for anyone. The man who invests his time and attention primarily in accumulating more of what he already has enough of is wasting, in Seneca's sense. Not because accumulation is wrong, because it is a second-order priority dressed as a first-order one. The first-order priority for the man in Erikson's 7th stage is generation, contribution, the deliberate investment of his specific capacities in something that will outlast him. I want to be specific about what is and is not being described here, because the language of legacy and contribution can easily slip into prescription that doesn't fit the actual texture of most men's lives. Generativity is not primarily about grand gestures or formal legacies. It is not necessarily about building institutions, publishing books, or achieving public recognition for one's contribution. It is, in most cases, much more intimate than that. It looks like the specific way a man invests his attention in the people directly around him, the mentorship that is offered, not as a formal program, but as the genuine investment of one's knowledge and experience in someone less far along the road. The quality of presence in the relationships that matter most. Not just reliable attendance, but the specific form of interest and engagement that makes another person feel genuinely seen and valued. It looks like the work that is done with the genuine intention of it being useful to someone. Not just competent, useful. Specifically, particularly useful to a specific person or group of people whose lives are measurably better because of it. It looks like the community contribution that doesn't require anyone to know it's yours. The involvement in something, a neighborhood, an institution, a cause that is larger than your personal interests and that would be diminished without your specific engagement. None of these require a radical restructuring of a life. They require a reorientation of attention within the life that already exists. The man who is already competent at his work and begins to invest some of that competence in developing the people around him has not changed his career. He has added a generative dimension to it. The man who is already present in his relationships and begins to invest more genuine attention in the specific interior lives of the people he is with has not changed his relationships. He has deepened them. This is the work of the midlife stage, according to Erikson. Not a new life, a reoriented one. Here is the question the episode has been building toward. Not in the abstract, in the specific texture of your actual life. In the domain of your actual relationships, your family, your friendships, your community. What are you contributing that would not be there without you? not what you are present for, not what you are reliable about. What specifically do you contribute? What do specific people receive from your specific presence, your specific attention, your specific investment that would be absent if you were not here? Take time with this. Not 5 minutes. Days, if needed. Let it be uncomfortable if it's uncomfortable, because the discomfort is information. The man who finds it difficult to answer this question in specific terms has found the boundary of his accumulation mode. He knows what he has built for himself. He has not yet thought carefully about what he is building for anyone else. And then the follow-up. If you were to deliberately invest in building something of this kind, something genuinely for someone else, in the domain of your actual life, what would it look like? Not a program, not a project plan, a genuine answer to a genuine question. What specific form would generativity take in your specific circumstances? For some men, the answer is immediately obvious once the question is asked. For others, it takes more time. But the asking of the question is itself the beginning of the transition. From a life organized around what can be accumulated to a life oriented around what can be given. From stagnation, in Erikson's terms, to generativity. From building a sandcastle to building something that might, in some form, in the lives of specific people, outlast the building of it. Come back to the question the episode opened with. What kind of man will you have been? Not what will you have achieved? Not what will people remember about your status or your success? What kind of man? The answer to this question, looked at honestly and from a sufficient distance, is not primarily constructed from the external markers. It is constructed from what happened in the interior lives of the people around you as a result of your presence. Did they learn something from you? Were they seen more clearly? Were they challenged in ways that helped them grow? Were they loved in ways that made them feel less alone? Did something exist in the world? A work, an institution, a community, a relationship that would not have existed without your specific contribution? This is what generativity asks. This is what Erikson's research shows predicts meaning, well-being, and a sense of having lived a life worth having lived. And this is what Marcus Aurelius was pointing at when he wrote night after night in the most powerful position on earth about the only thing he believed would genuinely matter when the power was gone. Not what he had commanded, what he had been, the quality of character he had expressed in his daily choices, the specific way he had used his specific position to do something of value for the people in his care. The question is not morbid. It is clarifying. What kind of man will you have been? And what can you do today? Not dramatically, but specifically, in the domain of your actual life and your actual relationships, that makes the answer to that question something you would choose. Start there. Here's the one thing worth carrying. What outlasts you is what you contributed.
The question is not whether you will leave. It is what kind of trace your being here will have made. The work of early adulthood is building. The work of the middle decades is generating, turning what has been built into something that extends beyond the self. The transition is not a crisis. It is the moment the life begins to mean something in the most lasting sense. Ask the question. Hold it carefully. Let it reorient. I'll see you in the next one.